Apologize for the sound challenges previously. We're definitely working to get that ironed out, as you'll hear today. As you know, the show focus is on Dash, but I think I'm going to lather a little bit of Cybertruck in there as well. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on the channel, a welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also appreciate it if you take time to like and subscribe, and comments are always appreciated as well. So, before I get into everything else, I just want to let you guys know that I've been getting sort of training in what's called Asperger's syndrome, which is a disease that Elon Musk has. And I actually met a lady who is in the greater Washington, D.C. area. She's actually a longtime instructor that's worked with hundreds of students with that disease. And among the elements of it, she pointed out, is something called no filter. They simply say whatever comes to mind, regardless of the consequences. And if you're going to understand kind of what's going on with Tesla and Elon and his other businesses, having some sense of this aspect of his personality, etc., might be helpful in you grasping what's going on. So moving on to our show. Now, I've been playing around with numbers. In the next few days, you're going to see numbers from the analysts. And basically what's happening is that Tesla has come up with a new service called Dash. It's an acronym, but basically what it is a Uber concept presented by Tesla that is unique in several ways. Number one, in the Tampa area where they've started doing work, they have sort of locations in 20 locations in the city. And if you want a Tesla Uber in the form of a Model Y that's painted yellow that has a human driver driving it around, you pay $2 a person, and they take you to one of those other 20 locations from the initial location they'd started at. I believe that the concept here was, it reduces a number of trips by people in certain dense areas. You also have the possibility of it opens up many possibilities, let's put it that way. So I wanted to dive into this today, obviously for many reasons, but the main reason is I think it's huge. The reason it's huge is there's a small word, but has big implications. That small word is something called recurring revenue. So when you think of, let's say, a car, if I sell you a car, you buy the car, and yeah, you might get a few maintenance fees, or Tesla may have an annual fee or whatever, but that's sort of small amounts of recurring revenue. What you really want is finding a way to both identify new revenue that comes in all the time and an amount of revenue that keeps growing over time in that space. So this is why I believe that, the way it's organized by Tesla, I think it potentially takes away, initially 5 or 10% of Uber's business. But I think as time marches forward and Tesla refines its process, this theoretically could take away 20 or 30% of the business that's enjoyed by Uber, Lyft in all of these markets. Clearly they're starting off and they're going to develop the concept, and once it's mastered, it'll be rolled out. Now, I have to say, kind of shock surprise for a number of reasons. Number one, they have people driving these, and it's not just being driven by test situations with the self-driving of Tesla. Number two, you got to pay those people, and if you sketch the numbers, $20 an hour, 4 people optimally driving around for an hour at $2 a pop, that's $8. So it's definitely a loss leader designed to test out the concept before you see actual pricing related to it. Because I think once you start paying in the pricing for full costs, especially the cost of the people, that'll be, a great situation. This also, I think, could be a precursor to Tesla starting to switch over to full self-driving tests, where you stop using the people or allow them to just sit in the car and not actually touch the controls. So I actually think this is really exciting because this is an expansion of the Tesla brand into a new area that I think represents potentially large revenue going forward. Therefore, the increasing value of the stock potential. I think what you'll notice is that this startup is going to be part of the revenue that's starting to happen as we end this quarter out. So both costs and revenue should show up, but I think they're going to be so small that, as usual with Tesla, represents such a small piece of what they're doing that they're going to be able to sort of hide these numbers for several quarters going forward. And so we're actually going to be reliant upon large institutional investors to use their analytical capability to start putting a guess of how these numbers are going to all work out. And I just can't, I just think it's such a win that I just think it's amazing. One of the win I'd like to highlight here is, as you may recall, there's been a slowdown of actually purchases for electric vehicles driven primarily by the fact that the charging infrastructure has fairly been unreliable and customers are unwilling to join the party without a plan at least as good as Tesla's quality for how electric is going to be dealt with. I believe we'll see an uptick in purchases of electric vehicles, if not from Tesla, from others, as we enter next year's official introduction of Ford and GM and the other folks that have agreed to sign on and use Tesla's charging facilities. And so I think the downward draft in sales of electric vehicles is valid based on the fact that there are a lot of consumers that have friends who maybe have taken the plunge and they can't find charging stations, or they find charging stations but they're backed up with people, or they find charging stations and the stations are broken, is actually the most common thing that's ticking off current and potential new electric vehicles open. One other thing that I'm scratching my head on and that I cannot figure out, but I know one of you is going to make a comment on this, is please type in Shanghai Tesla charging facilities. So one of the largest charging facilities for Tesla in the world is in Shanghai, where they took out at least 40, if not 100 spaces in a high rise where all these charging spaces are sitting there and a Tesla owner can drive in, charge up, and leave. Because like I'm in DC, but we also have, obviously New York was one of the biggest target markets, but there are all these places, Chicago, et cetera, where real estate is expensive. There are no, like open gas stations where we can have charging facilities like Wawa, et cetera. And so people have to bounce out of the city to get charged. And so they're using some of their charging capability just to get to and from the charging space, which kind of defeats the purpose because now you've consumed a bunch of your charge. So I really think there are other ways that we're going to solve the charging issue to make this more viable. So in general, I would say that Dash is pretty exciting. I wanted to invite you to watch some of the videos where they interview people that are driving. They interview kind of the people who put it together. You have large numbers of these yellow Model Ys driving around Tampa, but I just think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliantly set up and really looking forward to it making a dent and then rolling out in a number of other cities. So after you check it out, please let me know what your thoughts are. The final thing I'd like to roll up into today is the Cybertruck. So I'm going to just do a small piece about the Cybertruck here and then look forward to us doing more, particularly as we get a chance to hear more of the dirty details of like how many you're going to produce, over what time frame, how long is the list. There's a bunch of back of the envelope stuff that you can't do unless you have real numbers. So at least we have pricing now, 60,000, I guess 70,000 and 90,000. The cheapest vehicle won't be available until next year. There's a lot of stuff that's being worked out currently. So this morning I had a chance to read a bunch of articles about what happened with the truck. And I want to just suggest that I might be one of the dumbest guys out here that's involved with the whole Tesla analysis thing, because what I can't figure out is, why are all the people who hate Tesla, who don't want the company to succeed, the same one that are getting the opportunity to comment on everything? And then they never comment on, isn't it brilliant what Tesla's gotten done from scratch to where they are? There's always this nitpicking thing at anything that's done, and how can we bring up a negative inference? For example, half of the stories I read, they were focused on the thing taking 4 years to get here. Well, guess what? It's here. So why not comment on what's happening here rather than the last 4 years? So don't get me started, because I just think it's really dumb. And I think that if you grade yourself as a Tesla hater and you're watching my show, do me a favor. Don't do any more Tesla stories. That way you can save all your ink for the stories you do want to write about, not write about Tesla negatively. Now, I have to say that there's a thing that I've been focused on that makes me very excited about the Cybertruck that people are not discussing. So what that is there's a movie called Transformers. When that movie came out, very interesting, because the whole idea of the movie is there are these vehicles that can transform into other things, and therefore they can fight they can move around as a car, they can fight as a robot, all these other things. Now, my perspective on a Cybertruck is that sucker's a transformer. And when you view it from that angle, it's really exciting. So what the heck is a transformer in this case? Well, one of our biggest discussions over time has been that as real estate has gotten more expensive and gone up, for example, to optimize real estate, what also has occurred is that how people deal with cars has changed. So in the old days, you could put 4 or 5 cars on the driveway and drive different cars depending on your mood. Well, now a lot of people are trying to figure out, okay, how can I get a whole bunch of utility into one vehicle? So it can be a to and fro with the family. It can be an off-road, let's have some fun. It can be a sort of a pickup situation that gets you to and from, the hardware store, or, call it Lowe's or Home Depot. And so I think that this is totally awesome, because Tesla has all of those, but Sandy Monroe actually made a comment to me where he was like, man, when this thing comes out, my number one task with this is going to be to get it out in a hunting situation, because I can drive out into the space where the deer all move around. I can go to sleep, wake up the next morning, and I can watch the deer going by without them knowing that I'm here. So if you're getting my drift, this transformer can transform into a whole bunch of things. So in the Sandy Monroe use of the Cybertruck, think about it. If you would freeze to death if you went out there, but the other problem is the noise from the engine would actually scare the animals off as well. And so now you have, you're peeling off another example of how this thing transforms successfully. So the other thing I've been thinking about in the transformer element is I do not own a Jeep. But one of the things I've been learning about is this phenomenon where if you type in accessories for Jeeps, I mean, their whole store is devoted to accessorization of sort of Jeep products or trucks of that nature. There's all kinds of winches and lights on top and all these other things that people are doing to their vehicles successfully to transform it into whatever they'd like. And so I believe that when you look at the Cybertruck, it's easy to look at it one way, which is how you might use it or your friend might use it. But what if that sucker has 10 different ways it could go? And there are really bright people who are going to come up with creative methods that you and I didn't think of. They're like, oh, like one of the things I'm looking for with the Cybertruck is in a commercial setting. So right now, initially I'd heard it was going to be 14,000 pounds of towage, and then we just had an update that the actual towage is 11,000 pounds. Well, one of the things that I'm really, really looking forward to is seeing if a Frito-Lay, for example, couldn't simply put a trailer on the back of a Cybertruck, and now they can spend, call it $80,000 on a Cybertruck, and that's delivering chips to all these stores via a towed a carrier behind it. And instead of spending, theoretically $300K for a Cybertruck, those chips don't weigh a lot. So they could actually hit several customers, roll back, refill, and go to several other customers at a lot lower number. So as you can see, the number of transformer methods for this thing keep increasing. And I therefore think that there'll be more of them on the road than semi-trucks. And the reason is that they can get the job done at a lower cost, even if you have to do the configuration of maybe a pulled trailer to get it done, but you can still have the impact of reduced emissions from being able to use a vehicle like this. And you could basically buy, if you could buy 2 or 3 of them for the price of a semi, and now you have, vehicles able to go to 4 locations at the same time rather than 1, and then simply bounce through all of those deliveries. And we get the benefit to the planet of reduced emissions in the process. So I just think this is all exciting news to see the vehicle come out finally. And I think there's a lot of skepticism that's always been there. And yeah, if you're a skeptic, wait until it's successful and then do some interesting stuff about it. But if you're going to stay on the skeptical train, save it. Nobody else has a vehicle like it with that kind of functionality. And let's see it work, because I think there'll be changes to it, both by Tesla and by sort of informed users, that'll make this thing totally awesome. So we look forward to doing more about the Cybertruck as we get more information. Last note, please note my sine curve analysis. I felt like we kind of reached that, heading for that 250. I recommended that you hedge yourself, particularly if you have large numbers of shares. I do think that until we get the analyst reports that are positive, we're facing that 10, 15, 20 point potential drop, because the only voice being heard by anyone is sort of negativity, and therefore it's going to influence what people are doing. But I think if we get some informed investor reaction to increase revenue, increase customer contact, different types of customers, it doesn't cannibalize their business in many ways. I just think this is going to work out quite well. And I'm stunned by the 60K, and I'm hoping that they're not losing a lot of money on those, given how it's been priced, but what the real value is. At any rate, I want to thank you for joining us for our show today. Today's sort of health tips relate to, I had a meeting with a urologist, and he informed me that there's something called your PSA exam regarding prostate cancer, very high incidence of dying from issue, and he recommended that you have the test done once a year, and therefore you can find out and address any kind of issue that might have popped up. So again, take the PSA is a recommendation once a year by our urologist contact. At any rate, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, auf Weile Hitroad, Hoda Hefestra, Ziche Ni Hao Mo, Kumbawa, Arrivederci, Namaste. And in Jamaica, we say enough respect, walk good man. Thanks for joining us. Have a great day, and bye for now.